Hi, welcome back to another Advocacy Update. I'm Jen Goodale, and this is Cory Titus from MOAA's Government Relations team. And today we're going to chat a little bit about the most recent Quality of Life panel hearing. So, taking a step back, what is the Quality of Life panel, just as a reminder?
Yep. So to refresh on everyone's memory, the Quality of Life panel is something that is being done by the House Armed Services Committee. So this is something that specifically falls under the Military Personnel Committee, and the Quality of Life panel is tasked with looking at their namesake, and specifically with the goal of coming up with recommendations for service members and their families for next year's NDA.
Excellent. So General Kelly had an opportunity to speak with this Quality of Life panel alongside other MSOs like Blue Star Families, Military Family Advisory Network, and NMFA. So what was the recent topic?
Yep, so this was focused on military housing across the board for single service members, the barracks, and then family housing as well. But the majority of the conversation was really focused on single service members because unfortunately they've been overlooked.
And we're talking about a report, and who conducted the report?
So the report was done by the Government Accountability Office. So they're the ones that are, when you need an independent look at something, that goes to them. So they did a very deep dive on this topic and produced a really good report.
And Elizabeth Field has been doing all of the housing research for a while now, since 2019 at least.
Right, yep. We're big fans of GAO. They do great work, and we are often are found citing their work because they do such quality and balanced reporting on a whole bunch of topics that are important to our community.
So what did GAO find in this report?
They found just a lack of standards across the board. So between each of the services, they're not necessarily the same. And important things like having consistent HVAC, whether they have kitchenettes, and just a whole bunch of health concerns like mold or rodent infestations.
And I'm glad you brought up the difference in the services, because as we've seen a consolidation of bases and we have a lot more joint bases, we've got Marines living next to sailors, living next to soldiers, and they talk amongst themselves.
Right.
And if they're seeing different conditions and different standards of living amongst it, that could create a lot of animosity. And that's kind of an issue because we're facing a recruiting crisis, right?
Right. I think that's a really important point. They are talking to each other, and I think not only are they talking to each other, they're talking to potential recruits back home.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so GAO doesn't ever just do a report and say, these are all the bad things that are happening. Alongside those reports, they provide recommendations. So can you tell us something about those recommendations?
Yeah. There are 31 recommendations. So the DoD concurred, agreed with many of them, and some of them they said, oh, we're already doing that, or they didn't necessarily agree with that approach. But this is something that MOAA tracks closely and will be following each of these recommendations. So what they found across the board were just overall implementation gaps and inconsistent oversight.
And I think one of the things that is responsible for that is there's just so much going on.
Right.
So yes, someone needs to be held accountable, but who, that needs to be determined, and how best to ensure that oversight happens when you've got something that's in the FY21 NDAA that has not even been implemented. And now here we are arguing or advocating, for the FY24 NDAA. There's got to be someone looking back over all of the recommendations and the provisions that were included in that National Defense Authorization Act to improve these things, because it's just not happening.
And in part, that's our job. That's why having advocates like us is important. But the other part I think we need to recognize too is there's finite amounts of funding. And unfortunately, we haven't been seeing the services prioritize the barracks the way they need to.
Well, let's talk scale. So how many barracks are we talking about? How much money is this going to cost?
So looking at the scale, of the 9,000 barracks we have across the force, the majority of them are in the Army. So the Army has 6,700 of them. So what the Army installation lead, those testifying, said that around 300 of them are in poor or failing conditions, with troops living in them right now. And that gives you an idea about what we're looking at for the problem. But for the Army to fix it and get all them up to standard, it's going to cost around $6.5 billion just across the board to address all the different
Not
barracks.
just those 300.
Right, exactly.
When we talk about 300 barracks also, it's not as if one unit moves in and then they stay there. So this is impacting thousands and thousands of troops, because once a unit deploys, that barracks gets owned and inhabited by another unit, right? At least
Yeah.
that's how it happens in the Marine Corps.
Right, exactly. There's always a revolving door, one in, one out. So there's a challenge with you're going to do maintenance on a barracks. Depending on the issue, you might move an entire unit out, and then that has cascading effects as well.
Absolutely. All right, so what can our community do to help?
Whether you're a single service member living in the barracks now, or you're a leader overseeing troops that are living there, it's important to make sure you're passing things up to the chain of command, but also reach out to us. We want to know what's going on. So we make it easy, and you can go to the link in the description below and share your story and tell us what's going on, because as you know, as for advocates like us, it's really important to have that ground truth reality and be able to share that directly with folks on the Hill.
Well, thanks for joining us for another advocacy update. Again, please visit the link below and make sure you share your stories so that we can bring them to the Quality of Life panel. As a reminder, these are so important for next year's National Defense Authorization Act and getting these issues addressed. If you're enjoying these videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.